Hi, my name is Diane Peters. I just thought I'd talk to you today a little bit about some of the things that interest me the most. And to be honest with you, what I really like are quotes. I think quotes are my favorite book of all time, is the Bible. But what I like about quotes is it really says something about your life. It can help you just focus in more on some things that might be going on in your life. Like I said, Bible's my favorite book. Scriptures, of course, are my favorite. But another thing I do like are quotes by famous people. Now, one of my best ones is this one by Robert Schuller, and it's tough times never last, but tough people do. And I have to be honest with you, I've been through some pretty tough times. I don't need to elaborate on the negative of it, but I just know that every time I came to an instance in my life where it seemed like I was getting beat down, something rises up in me. I'm a godly fearing person, so for me nowadays, it's just the idea that I know that it's God helping me. But historically, I was just that person. I just didn't like to get beat. And if it seemed like I was in a position where something or someone was going to beat me, my motto was, I'm not going down here. You may be going down. And the harder they pushed me, the more determined I was. Now, I'll tell you about an incident that happened to me when I was with a major company, and I was working on a project, and back in those days, computers were just a foreign object, but the company I was working for was computerizing their programs, and their annual reports, and I was working for a vice president, and like I said, this was back in the 80s. The vice president didn't know anything about computers, but I learned that later. So basically, I was working with a bunch of programmers to help them computerize their marketing reports. And I had told the vice president, well, you know what? I cannot design an input sheet. He wanted me to design a data input sheet before I even had a program. But he was insisting that I do it. He was really initially working with my boss. I was a research analyst. My boss, was my supervisor. But this vice president had intimidated my boss so much that he basically backed out. Believe it or not, the guy got chicken and claimed that he was sick and took a leave of absence. So that left me with the VP of marketing. So once again, to go back to the story, he was insisting that I give him this data input sheet. I kept trying to explain to him, I can't give that to you. I don't have a program. He didn't want to listen. He gave me a certain time period. At the end of that week, I had to have that data input sheet. Of course, I didn't have it, but I went down with some solutions. Didn't want to go down there and say, I can't do it. I came down with some ideas, some bullet points that would help him. I'd also talk to my director of my department who helped me formulate these ideas. Went down into this gentleman's office. He was on the 7th floor. We were on the 8th floor. And he was a vice president. I went into his office. He was like 6'3", all heavy of him. At that time, I was maybe 110 pounds, 5 feet. And I sat down and I proceeded to explain to him why I could not do it. But here's some solutions. Suppose I do this. Suppose I do that. He stood up and he said, "Are you saying you don't want to work for me?" And I said, "No, that is not what I'm saying." Well, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I don't like when people put words in my mouth. I never once told this gentleman, who's my boss's boss, that I was not going to do this project. I was briefly trying to explain to him some of the alternatives and what I could offer him. I didn't want to lie to him, as had been suggested by some of my peers. I wanted to be truthful with him. Well, he stood up again. "You're saying you don't want to work for me. Just get out of my office." His door was open. Everybody on that floor heard him, secretary included, and I was mad. I was so mad, I was counting. By the time I got up to my floor, the director of my department met me at the elevator. "Diane, did you tell him you didn't want to work for me?" I said, "No, he's a liar." And I went in my office and slammed the door. And then my boss was trying to go. I said, "No, leave me alone. I'm really not having a great day right now. We have to talk later." I was livid. So mind you, back in those days, what we used to do is we used to have, you'd work long hours and we'd have our happy hour. And we all go out, and in those days you could expense it. You put on your expense report that you took your department out for drinks. Well, this gentleman in particular loved those social hours, after hours social hours. And he would come in the whole department and say, guess what, guys, we worked late tonight, we're going out. Or he'd have his secretary call up and tell us all we're going out. Well, this happened 2 or 3 times, and Diane never went out. I said, I'm not going out. So he'd come by the office, walk by my office. I could see him walk by. I kept my head down and say out loud, we're all going out for drinks. I was the only one in the department that would not go. The secretary, everybody was going. I wasn't going. So I talked to the programmers who were working on the project with me, and they're like, Diane, we're going to tell him we're not going to work with him unless he gets you back on this project. I said, please don't do me any favors. That guy's a knucklehead. And they started laughing, of course, and I wasn't laughing. I was still fuming because I don't like the idea this guy said he's telling a lie on me. I didn't tell him I didn't want to work. He wasn't being reasonable. He didn't want to listen to my suggestions, so I was livid. So anyway, I guess the programmers had convinced him, you better get Diane back on this project or we're not working with you. So one day he comes upstairs and I could see him lingering outside my office, but I wouldn't pay any attention to him. And he just kept standing there. I would not even look up. I knew he was standing there. I would not look up. Finally he says, excuse me, Diane, do you mind if I come in? I said, no, I don't mind. So he came in, mind you, my head was down. And he said, I want to talk to you about something. I said, okay. Well then, in those days you could smoke cigarettes, and I used to be a smoker, so he saw cigarettes on my desk, and he said, do you mind if I have a cigarette? I said, go ahead. So he says, you know that project we were working on? I said, the one you kicked me off? He says, well, let's not talk about that. He says, let's just talk about that project. Now, what I understand is, and then he went to proceed on how he thought we could, we'd work together. He liked me back on this project. Well, I said to him, listen, these are my conditions. You let me do the program. You let me work with the programmers myself. I'll report to you once a week what is going on. I'll have it written up if you insist. But you let me take control of this. And trust me, I'm going to do a great job. I'm going to make you really proud. I'm going to make you very happy that I'm working with you. Do you agree to those conditions? Well, he put his head down and he said, okay. So, needless to say, we worked on the project. And let me tell you something. Usually when I have a run-in with someone, especially someone like that, I never just would hold anything against them. It was over as far as I was concerned. I was working on the project. He let me work it through, worked very well. Well, back in those days, you always had reorganizations. So we went through a reorganization, and it just so happened my department that was under him was being reorganized into another division. And the funny thing, he and his boss both wanted me, who was the senior VP, wanted me to work on, to stay with them. And, my boss was saying that, she can't stay. She's a part of our department. They kept insisting. So we had to sit down, the senior VP and myself, and I was asking them, what's going on? Why do you guys want me to work for you? These guys are so cute. They ended up telling me they knew the computers were going to be a big thing, and they knew nothing about it. And they said that I had done such a good job. In fact, they gave me a letter of recommendation and said that they really would appreciate if I would stay with them. Oh, mind you, I was torn because, like I said, at this point, we had, it was water under the bridge what had happened. We had worked together. I liked these guys. I understood them very well. They understood me. But in the long run, it was out of my hands and everybody else's. I ended up going with my department because, like I said, I wasn't like a manager or anything. I was just a research coordinator. So that's one of the stories of when, it was tough. And I could have gotten scared. But that's what happens with me. When the pressure comes on, I don't know, something rises up with me and I just I'm not going to get ugly, although I must admit sometimes that has happened, but I will stand my ground, especially if I'm right. And in this instance, I knew I was right and I wasn't lying to him. So I just have to remind everybody, when tough times come, it's going to be a lesson for you. I never would have gotten to know these 2 vice presidents. I never would have gotten to know my strength. I could have run from that like my immediate supervisor did. But I chose not to. And I don't know why that happens in me. I give the glory to God now, but I know historically I've never been what I call a quitter. So when tough times come, just remember one thing. Don't let it get you down. You're always going to have tough times. It's going to build your character. It's going to make you a stronger individual. Life is all about standing up when something or someone is coming to knock you down. Now, I just heard today about a young girl who was told by her doctors, only 9 years old, that she was not going to be able to walk. This touched my heart. Imagine a 9-year-old who had a disease or an illness that technically, on paper, the doctors weren't wrong. She told them, I don't know why they're telling me this. And guess what? That little girl is walking today. So it's not what is happening to you. It's what's inside of you. The minute the fear comes, don't go with it. Go against it. Once you go through that experience, you're going to feel tougher. You're going to feel stronger. You're going to feel in charge. And that's what tough times are there for. So I think I've given you a long enough story. You know a little bit about me. I've enjoyed talking to you. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me. It's a great day. Go out and make it a great one. Thank you for listening. God bless you.